Welcome back. Joining me now is former Congressman Patrick Kennedy of Rhode Island, a longtime advocate for better mental health policy. As a congressman, he co-authored the Mental Health Parity Act, which forces insurance companies to treat mental health issues just like any other medical condition. His book, Profiles in Mental Health Courage, offers inspiring accounts of Americans living with mental illness and addiction. Congressman Kennedy, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you, Kristen. It's great to be with you.
It is so wonderful to have you here for this really important conversation.
We really appreciate Meet the Press taking this role of highlighting this issue and how important it is to the country.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Congressman. Well, you've been a big part of the conversation, and you've been very outspoken about your own struggles with bipolar disorder, with addiction. You just heard my conversation with the Surgeon General talking about the fact that the country has a crisis, an epidemic of loneliness. How did we get here?
Well, obviously, I think social media is the big culprit. Yeah. The key here is how are we going to get out of it? And we need to educate our kids about the coping mechanisms and problem-solving skills and how they can emotionally regulate. We've got to make that an essential skill in our schools. Because let's face it, technology is here to stay, stress and trauma is here to stay. Yeah. What we need is to give kids the ability to mediate their emotions and understand that there are actually skills that they can deploy that will help them manage their feelings. And my wife's a public school teacher. 10 years ago, they had STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math. The business community said, we need this for competitiveness. I would say today, for competitiveness, employers, and you insist that our public education system adopt skill building in brain health, ability for kids to learn how to manage stress, because you can't have all these Gen Zs and beyond go to work and not be able to, one, focus on their job, or to be worried because they can't manage their intrusive thoughts, right? In recovery, in my own case, I get this education from my mental health therapist, from my 12-step recovery peers, and my life has been transformed as a result. But I think about all those that don't get that, and I think to myself, what a shame that we don't make this essential in the development of our children.
So it should just be in the schools just like any other class? Or
well, you know, Kristen, I got to rededicate the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in Fort Bragg for the Green Berets. Do you know the Green Berets have more mental health for the Green Berets than any other branch of the service? And you might say, why do the Green Berets need it? They're the strongest fighters that we have. Because the military's figured out that they can't have our special forces go into the field and have any distracting thoughts, have any intrusive thoughts. They literally need to be able to manage those intrusive thoughts so that they don't lose focus on the mission. And that's what we need for all Americans.
Let's talk a little bit about your book, Profiles in Mental Health Courage. Congressman, was there a common theme that you found throughout these conversations about why people were struggling with mental health issues?
Well, the delivery system, whether it's the regulations that create 50 different state licensure for clinicians, or the telehealth, which is a patchwork quilt of what's available, or it's the million different measurements for what constitutes outcomes. We are just not organized in this country. If we're really serious about making a difference, we need to simplify the system. We need to change the reimbursement model. And by the way, if we want good results, we have to invest in what I call a prevention fund of sorts. And we know about this reinsurance and this high-risk fund. So what I would like is all the payers, the states, the feds, to put in dollars based upon the actuarial impact of these illnesses. Foster care dollars, huge, because parents are addicted and they have to be taken into state custody. Criminal justice dollars, over half of that is mental health and addiction. Why aren't we putting some of those dollars in a prevention fund where we can identify those people at highest risk and invest now? Because the current insurance model only reimburses within a year. If you can't show a ROI within a year, you've lost it. We need a prevention fund that can have a ROI over 5-10 years.
So you're saying structural change both in the medical and insurance space, but also in terms of social media, which you mentioned, and of course the Surgeon General mentioned as well, especially for young people. I want to play something, part of testimony from Ava Smithing. She shared her story in Congress about struggling with an eating disorder, and she says she was encouraged on social media. Take a look.
They stored my insecurity as data and linked it to all of my accounts across the internet. They used my data to infer what other types of ads and content I might like, leading me down a pipeline from bikini advertisements to exercise videos to dieting tips and finally to eating disorder content. I have a very specific memory of one post titled Ballerina Diet, suggesting that the daily intake of only a black coffee, an orange, and 16 almonds would keep me thin.
It's hard to listen to that, Congressman, and there's actually a bill being reintroduced in the Senate. It's called the Kids Online Safety Act. It would require platforms to take steps to mitigate exactly what we just heard from Ava. Do you think that type of legislation would make a difference? Is that what the country needs?
So here's the problem. Our country is falling down on its own responsibility as stewards to our children's future. We are commercializing marijuana across the country. How in the world, with kids' anxiety rates and depression rates, does it make sense to add to the addiction crisis by having more access to addiction products? Then you've got sports betting. Our states are becoming addicted to the revenue of sports betting. And I can guarantee you, just like you're playing that story about that young woman who's getting targeted, we already know the algorithms for these betting companies are targeting people who are high risk. And we are going to see a high correlation between people with gambling addiction and suicide. And so what I'm saying, Kristen, is we can't just pass these bills. We got to stop all of these intrusive addiction for-profit companies from taking our kids hostage. That's what they're doing. This is a fight, and we are losing the fight because we're not out there fighting for our kids to protect them from these businesses that their whole profit motive is, how am I going to capture that consumer and lock them in as a consumer?
Well, you take me to my next question, because the last time Congress passed legislation that was aimed at helping kids in this space was 1998. Congressman, why has it been so hard for Congress to act as a former member of Congress?
Well, the power of the social media giants and their money, there's going to be a bigger settlement by Meta and all the big social media companies than even was tobacco or Purdue combined. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We as a country have seen these companies and industries take advantage of the addiction for profit. Purdue, tobacco, social media is the next one. And unfortunately, it's going to have to be litigated. We have to go after the devastating impact that these companies are having on our kids.
Very quickly, Congressman, you have overcome so much. What is your message to families who are struggling right now? What can give them hope in this moment?
Well, first, it's community. It's what Dr. Murthy was talking about. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for just my family, but I go to 12-step recovery every single day. I love the Zoom meetings, but frankly, it's the in-person meetings that have saved my life, because I go there and I'm one with all of my friends, no matter where and what walk of life whatever their political party, we all share one thing in common, and that is the need to hold on to one another for our own survival. And that supersedes everything. I often go on Fox, one of your competitors, on the marijuana thing, and my phone lights up afterwards. I can't believe how many of my colleagues who I go to meetings with are watching Fox. And you know what? It just shows it doesn't matter our political backgrounds. When we're in recovery, helping one another is our #1 priority.
All right, the power of community. Congressman Kennedy, thank you so much for being here. Wonderful to see you, as always.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.